morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. The participants are still coming in. We're almost at 100 now, and we shall just begin so that we do not take so much time in this preliminary session. As we begin, once again, welcome all to this webinar on the Kenyan coffee and tea market access to Finland. And I would like to just run through the order of the presentations as we begin this session. My name is Samuel Rere from the Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, and we shall begin with opening remarks from our Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Floyce Mukabana, and then we shall have some remarks from the representative from Fit Partnership, Mr. Axel Sointu. Then we shall go into the presentation by Linda Pirto, and a short Q&A session shall follow. And then we shall go into the next presentation by Ms. Kati Sovali, a short Q&A session, and finally we shall come to a close. So I shall, without taking too much time, I think we shall go straight into the opening remarks as we begin the session. You're welcome, Floyce Mukabana. Floyce. Hello, Floyce. Okay, as Floyce handles that, I would like to ask Axel to make his presentation as we seek to make sure Floyce joins in. Welcome, Axel.
Certainly, thank you very much. Keproba CEO, Madam Mukabana, CEOs and representatives of the tea and coffee sector, dear ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this online session co-organized by Keproba and Fin Partnership. Fin Partnership is a program under the Ministry for Foreign Affairs with the mandate to promote sustainable development through long-term business partnerships between companies from Finland and emerging and developing markets. The program has been running since 2006, and historically, Kenya has been one of the most popular markets in terms of projects implemented by Finnish companies with the support of Fin Partnership. In recent years, the Kenyan market in general has certainly attracted quite a bit of attention on a global scale, also having its implications on the collective Finnish effort and pursuit for commercial partnerships. In addition to the embassy, for over 10 years now, Business Finland, the Finnish Organization for Innovation and Trade Promotion, has had a regional office in Kenya. More recently, the Finnish development finance institution FinFund opened its office in Nairobi. And most importantly, from the point of view of Fin Partnership, a bit over a year ago, Elizabeth Okunda joined our team, allowing also us to have a local presence. Adding to that, last month, Aaron Gishane joined the Fin Partnership team in Nairobi. As a small, still results-oriented program, Fin Partnership very much places emphasis on collaboration and partnerships with organizations sharing our mandate, facilitating international and intercontinental business partnerships. This is in our DNA even. On that note, I would like to extend our gratitude to Keproba and the key persons behind all arrangements for putting together this webinar. At the same time, I also want to thank our two speakers, Ms. Linda Pirto, Commercial Counselor from the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and Ms. Kati Sorvali-Bureen, Sourcing Manager at Pauli Group. After all, the information and expertise about to be shared by these two ladies form the very essence of this webinar. Without jumping ahead of things, I still wish to share that as a follow-up exercise, after this webinar, Fin Partnership will be reaching out to different stakeholders and companies in Finland for promoting the possibility to initiate discussions with potential Kenyan partners in the coffee and tea sector. Based on demand, our team members in Nairobi, Elizabeth and Aaron, together with the assistance of Keproba, will be able to guide the Finnish companies further. Once more, a warm welcome to all participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Axel. Thank you for those remarks. Lois, it's good to have you back. Welcome, and please share your remarks.
Thank you very much, Rere, and thank you very much, team. Apologies for the
Lois, can you hear us?
I'm now back.
Lois, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? You can you? Yes, me and team.
You're breaking. We can't hear you very clearly. Maybe you could proceed as we try and address that. Lois, as
Proceed, and hopefully you'll be able to hear me.
now we can hear you now.
Okay, so then allow me to go to my remarks. I begin with salutations to our most able panel before us. We have Mr. Azel Sointo from Business Partnership, leading Fin Partnership. We have Ms. Linda Pito, the Commercial Councillor Department for International Trade, Sustainable Trade Unit in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Finland, and Ms. Kati Sovali Boren, the Sourcing Manager for Puli Group. All the distinguished participants here, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency, I'm greatly honored and pleased to welcome you all to this webinar on market access for coffee and tea in the Finnish market. Thank you for joining. For those of us who haven't interacted with Kenya Export Promotion and Branding Agency before, we are a government organization who's been mandated to implement export promotion and nation branding initiatives and policies to promote the export of Kenyan goods and services. From the onset, allow me to thank our partners from Finland for their immense support in hosting this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya and Finland and the larger European Union share strong ties, particularly in trade and investment, as well as in development cooperation across many of Kenya's economic and social sectors. The European Union is a significant trading partner for Kenya, representing one of Kenya's biggest export markets. Kenya's exports to the EU accounted for 15.3% of the country's exports to the world in 2022. These exports are mainly agricultural products, notably tea, coffee, cut flowers, fruits, and vegetables. On a bilateral basis, Kenya's exports to Finland are valued at USD 8.8 million in 2022, while imports from Finland are valued at USD 52 million. However, there are significant opportunities to increase the level of trade between Finland and Kenya and Finland, as well as the larger EU. This will be achieved by, among others, understanding the emerging requirements and regulations that have been adopted by the EU that will inevitably affect Kenya's exports, which our producers and exporters need to be aware of. It is on this basis that we have convened this webinar which is also a follow-up for the recent engagements we have had with the European Union, particularly the Kenya-EU Business Forum in February 2023, and the Keproba EU Breakfast Meeting in March 2023, both of which underscored the need for closer collaboration between Kenya and members of the European Union to foster trade and investment relations. Therefore, we are greatly pleased to collaborate with Fin Partnership in this regard. Today, we begin a conversation about the sustainable market access requirements into the European Union and on an understanding of the tea and coffee landscape of the Finnish market, in hope that Kenyan exporters are enlightened to the export opportunities in this market. We believe that there's an immense export opportunities both in Finland and larger EU for our business community in Kenya, and to follow through with them. Regular engagements of this nature are vital to bridge the information gaps. As an agency, we remain committed to continuing championing the market linkages between Kenya businesses community and the Finnish and our EU counterparts. So once again, I'd like to welcome all of you as we look forward to the wonderful engagements that are before us today. I would like to then welcome you and thank you in Swahili and say asante sana. Over to you, Samu.
Thank you very much, Madam Floyce. As we go into the presentations, I would like to just encourage each participant. If you have any questions as the presentations go on, feel free to use the chat facility that is available to us. Ask any questions, any comments, which we shall review as we go along and point out. So all of us shall be muted as we follow the presentation. I also want to note that this webinar is being recorded, and later on we shall be able to even get access to review the discussions. So I would like to invite Linda, Ms. Linda Virto, Commercial Consular at the Department of International Trade, Sustainable Trade Unit of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Finland. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Rere, and good morning to you all from Finland, Helsinki. It's nice to be here, so thank you for the invitation. I am indeed Linda Virto, and I work for the Sustainable Trade Unit at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs. I deal mostly with free trade agreements and EU legislation regarding sustainability issues. And today I'm going to give you a brief presentation on the EU legislation on sustainable value chains and its meaning or main implications for you. If I can have the first slide, the next slide, please. So in recent years, the European Union has introduced quite a lot of legislation regarding the sustainability of European value chain. And all of this legislation is based on the concept of due diligence. And here the concept of due diligence comes from the internationally agreed guidelines on responsible business conduct, namely the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights and the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. And if you get to know this due diligence process from the international voluntary guidelines, it's much easier to try to understand what the EU legislation is about. So in essence, we're talking about an ongoing process where a business identifies, prevents, mitigates, and seizes potential and actual adverse impacts in its own operations, supply chains, and other business relationships. And as I mentioned, this is an ongoing process which starts by embedding responsible business conduct principles into one's policies and management systems, identifying and assessing adverse impacts, both in own operations and in supply chains. And when those adverse impacts have been identified, obviously one tries to seize, prevent, or mitigate those. And then another vital point of this process is to track implementation and results. How have these prevention methods worked? And the fifth step is publicly communicating how these impacts have been addressed. And then if things go wrong, then provide for or cooperate in remediation when appropriate. So this picture, I think, really helps to understand what the European Union is trying to achieve with its legislation, for example, on corporate sustainability due diligence. And we talk about adverse impacts, not, for example, human rights violations, because only states can do human rights violations. So when the actor is a private sector business, for example, then they can have an adverse impact on people or the environment. And this means an action or omission that removes or reduces the ability of an individual to enjoy their human rights. And if you want to know more about what this due diligence means in practice, I would really strongly recommend getting to know the OECD due diligence guidance for responsible business conduct, which is from 2018. There, the OECD really tries to explain what this process means in different business situations and different scenarios. Thanks. Next slide, please. So I've tried to now include the almost 130 pages of legislative text into one slide to give you a picture of what this upcoming legislation is about. The aim is to increase respect for human rights and the environment in global value chains. And what the EU is proposing for businesses is, as mentioned in my previous slide, that businesses do this kind of policy integration. So in other words, embed responsible business conduct into their operations, that they identify potential and actual adverse impacts. They create some kind of a prevention plan on how to prevent those adverse impacts from happening. They would be required to do some mitigation actions, and then obviously if potential adverse impacts occur, then ending those adverse impacts, including writing a corrective action plan. Other duties include contractual assurances, so that businesses would be required to ask from their business partners to sign papers that they are also committed to responsible business conduct and respecting human rights and the environment. There is one aspect of this legislation which is highly debatable, and we don't still know what the end result will be, but there will likely to be some kind of civil liability. So in other words, there is a possibility that businesses could be held liable for adverse impacts of their own actions. Then another important part of this legislation, as I mentioned in my previous slide, is the public communication. So in other words, it is quite impossible for stakeholders, consumers, other businesses, us governments to follow what is happening in businesses if there is no public communication. So there will be requirements for businesses to tell publicly what they have been doing in order to conduct due diligence. There will also be some kind of obligation to set up a complaints procedure. So for interested parties to have a chance to tell the business if they know that something is wrong. There will be some references on how to support smaller and medium-sized companies, and then also some kind of a requirement to do collaboration between companies. For member states, obviously, we will have to make sure that this legislation is implemented, and we have to set up supervisory authorities. So this proposal was introduced last year in February, and now we are at the stage where we are negotiating the end result between us member states, the European Commission, and the European Parliament. We have the parliament election next spring, so in essence, we need to have a result by February. If that doesn't happen, then there will be a 6-month gap. But it is very, I wouldn't say that there is even a possibility that this legislation wouldn't come into force. It will, but it's just a question of when. And application will differ based on company size. I would say in my personal capacity that I'm guessing that this will start to apply in year 2027. So what would this now mean to, can I have the previous slide, please? For you in practice. So obviously, as I mentioned, we are still negotiating the legal package, so I don't yet know what the exact obligations will be. But if we go to the next slide, this is probably in all likelihood what you will need to do in order to access the European market. So you will need to identify what is that you do and how does what you do affect people and the environment. What are your actual and potential adverse human rights and environmental impacts of your own actions and your supply chain's actions? And then prevent and mitigate those adverse impacts. You need to create an effective grievance mechanism, some kind of a remediation mechanism, and then track and monitor your performance and your supply chain's performance, and then be able to communicate what it is that you have identified and what have you been doing to mitigate those issues, and then what have been the results so far. But this in a nutshell and in a very simplified manner is what it is that the legislation expects from you. Next slide. Thank you. This is it. And I hope this clarifies of what the upcoming legislation is and what it expects from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Elizabeth, please take over.
Thank you, Samuel. I hope you can hear me. So we have a few questions, and I'm wondering if we'll take them now. Maybe we can take one now. Then we have a raft of questions from Mr. Francis Ouko. But I'm thinking maybe the next speaker would also be able to shed more light into this. Maybe I can ask the question, and then maybe Ms. Linda, you can respond a bit. And then maybe as we get into the next presentation, some of this can be expounded. So we have one of the questions from Paul Muhoro, and he's trying to find out about the checklist of documents that are needed to export coffee. I want to believe also to NT to Finland, and where somebody can reach out several buyers or contact persons for onward discussions and transactions for this. So I don't know if you want to take that, Linda, or we could also have Kati shed more light on that. Maybe you can start, and then Kati can also shed light into that.
Yes, thank you. It's an excellent question. And as I mentioned, the legislation is still being negotiated, so it's not ready yet. So we are not yet at the point where we can give checklists or guidance. But this is already envisaged. So when the legislation is ready and it's been approved, then the European Commission will publish all kinds of checklists, guidance, and there will be also a help desk. So what the obligations will be, then we can provide assistance of complying with those requirements, but that is still in the future. So we are looking into 2025-26. And the European Commission also has different kind of support programs, mainly on cocoa, coffee, and textile and garments, but also others. So there will be support provided. But at the moment, it's still depending on what the result of the negotiations will be. But we will give more information when we get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Maybe I could take one more question from among the ones Francis has asked about the policies, like how the EU, Finnish and EU policies going to help shorten the farmers' producers' life cycles of their pay. Like, how can that be shortened? I want to believe, because right now the payment cycles could be taking longer. Is any part of the policy going to address that?
Can you repeat the life cycle of
the payment, the pay cycle?
I don't think so. That would go quite deeply into kind of business to business agreements. At the moment, it doesn't seem likely. That's my point. At this stage, I would say that it's not going to go there. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we could pack the other questions that have been raised. We can handle that after we hear from Curtis. So over to you, Samuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And thank you very much for the questions that are coming through. Very, very good questions. We hope that at the end of this, we shall respond to the questions. And maybe as we go along, I'd like to just invite Ms. Kati. Ms. Kati Sovali Boran, sourcing manager from Pauli Group, to make her presentation on the Finnish coffee and tea markets and the consumer preferences. Welcome, Kati.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. Can you see the presentation already or not yet?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then good. Okay, so good morning to all from my side as well. So I am from Finland and doing green coffee sourcing from Africa to Paulik. Paulik is Finland's biggest coffee roastery. And then during this 20-ish minutes, I will try to give you an insight on the coffee and tea markets, but also from the aspects on what we look from the supply chain and where we pay attention on. My perspective is from the Finnish markets and mostly on the coffee side, but I do not see any reason why this would not be valid generally to other European markets as well, or tea, because they go quite aligned on what we look for. So I will just briefly say a few things about Paulik as a company, then the coffee products on the Finnish markets, a bit about coffee culture, and then requirements for the physical coffee and the supply chain. So Paulik as a company is over 147 years old, family established and still owned by the same family. The company started from coffee, but nowadays it is a multinational large group that is more than coffee. So we are in coffee, Tex-Mex, Asia, spices, snacking, and so on. So we have grown a lot along the way. But today we are focusing on the coffee, where Paulik history started as well. So we operate in 14 countries with 8 out of 11 factories nowadays being carbon neutral. The coffee itself is roasted only in Finland, but coffee products we sell in Finland and Baltics. And then, so here, if you can see my mouse, is where we are based. In Porvoo, we have also a smaller roastery, like micro roastery, but the biggest volumes are roasted in Helsinki. So currently we are about 2,300 employees with the revenue over 1 billion euros. So since these numbers are from last year. We also have here business area on the other being 4%. That is referring to Russia, where we also had roasting grinding factory and products on the Russian markets as well. But given the political situation, we, like many other European companies, withdrew and sold everything there. So now we are focusing on the business and in Finland and Baltics, so on. Then on the coffee roastery. So our coffee roastery and main office is in Finland, Vuosaari. It is still fairly new roasting and grinding factory, and it is one of the biggest in Europe with the state-of-the-art technology and runs with biogas. So we have there at the moment 3 roasting machines. Each machine can roast about 500 kilograms of green coffee at once. Roasting time is about 6 to 12 minutes, depending on the roasting level we are aiming at. Average may be closer to 6 or 7 minutes for the most of the volume due to the light roasting profile the Finns prefer to drink. So we produce annually then maybe 30 to 40 million kilos and produce about 60 million coffee packages. So very quick introduction to Pauli and the coffee producing. So now you know that the Finns are heavy coffee drinkers, or you may know. So we drink a lot of coffee. I don't know if it's the cold weather or the darkness, but we do drink it along the year. So we consume coffee per capita the most in the world. So every Finnish person drinks in average about 3.2 coffee cups a day. Personally, I only drink 1 cup a day, but then that is like half a liter. So maybe I go into the average coffee drinker as well. There's only that much coffee that the Finns can drink. So we launched also just lately decaf coffee. So now Finns can drink coffee in the evening as well. So maybe we will have even more coffee drinking in the later. So Finland is more coffee than tea drinking country. Although the consumption has increased as well during the last 10 years. It's maybe like historical reason, usually that then we are, from historical reason, we drink more coffee than tea, as it goes with other countries as well. It comes from the history. So when you go more east or southeast from Finland, then the tea drinking over coffee starts to increase gradually. So here you can see products from that are basically on every store and in the Finnish supermarkets. So all coffee are sold as blends. So blend is usually done before roasting, but can be done after grinding as well. So here you can see the products, and then one on the top left corner, the red, is the Juhlamokka. This is the original Pauli coffee, launched over 90 years ago, and still the most drank coffee in Finland. And this is only sold in Finland and only for the Finnish markets. So almost every second cup drank in Finland is this coffee. So Juhlamokka is a blend of Arabica coffees from Brazil, Colombia, Central America, and then Africa. And then we have roasting levels going from 1 to 5. That's like our roasting scale. And the most coffee sold is the roasting level 1. So very, very light roasted coffee. We have different brands in the coffee and different profiles of coffee as well, then to reach every consumer with different likings. So we have roasting levels from 1 to 5, and then different flavors, different blends, trying to meet all likings. And then, like I said earlier, we sell coffee in Baltics as well. And then these are the products we have on the Baltic markets. So when selling to Baltics, the blending changes a bit. It goes a bit more darker roasted. There's still a lot of, or most of, is Arabica, but then here you can find on the blends a bit of Robusta as well. So you may know that the coffee habit, the way we like it and the way we drink, it varies quite a lot. Then depending on where in the world you go. You go Asia, you can get heavy dose of Robusta, roasted dark, served with condensed milk and sugar. You go South Europe, you get more intense dark roasted coffee. But in Finland, you get usually light roasted Arabica. That's our favorite coffee, the way we have gotten used to drink it. So about 90% of the coffee sold in Finland is sold as roasted, grinded. So it's done by filtering. Filtered coffee is the way we have it. And then over 65% of the coffee is sold light roasted. But in the recent years, dark roasted coffee has increased. Nowadays, it is a bit less than 30% of the coffee sold. And then the increase in consumption is mainly due to the young people who tend to prefer the darker roast now. So that's something that we see that is increasing, but still most of it is light roasted. And then a bit of numbers on the coffee imported to Finland. So this is from the years 21, 22. So over 50 tons coffee imported to Finland last year. Biggest countries are obviously Brazil, Colombia, Honduras, Nicaragua, and then a lot of coffee producing countries from Africa. And not that big of a difference between the African countries then. I can't say any specific numbers from our half, but yeah, since we are the biggest roaster in Finland, you can guess that most of the coffee here is then maybe coming to our roastery in Vuosaari. And then now that you know a bit about the product of Paulik, the drinking habits of the Finns, the coffee, not the other drinking habits, let's go to the actual green coffee buying. So on the quality, so this is the foundation to everything we do. And then it should be the foundation for everything you do as well. So already the founder said ages ago that if you compromise quality, you might as well stop doing what you're doing. So we don't do things halfway. And then we expect the same from our supply chain. We are known to buy good quality, and this is where it comes from. And for us, the quality means that firstly, you comply with the regulations and food safety. That goes without saying. There can't be no residues from the fertilizer pesticides that go above the EU limits. Now, recently, there was the addition on the mosh residues. And these, from Africa side, I can say that we have seen residues that have been over the limit, that we have not been able to take the coffee in. So, and what we've seen is that these residues have been, that they have come to the coffee from the jute sacks being used. Not that we buy the coffee in the bags, but along the way, they have been in poor quality jute bags that then take in the residues from mineral oils or whatever it is. So that's what we've seen from Africa. But that's something that we expect that the limit is there below it before the coffee is sent to us, but we do tests of our own as well, that the coffee meets the requirements on the limits. So obviously no foreign objects, sticks, stones in the coffee. It affects the quality, but if poor quality in that sense, it can also destroy our roasting machines if there's like stones in it. No allergens, obviously, and then no defects on the coffee, no phenolic, no dirty, no potato cups, no past crops, fresh crop, okay, fresh coffee. So when we buy the coffee, on the coffee profiles, we also always provide a specific description of the body, the balance, the acidity, flavor, the pleasantness, and then the intensity of the coffee. So this is defined every time separately for each of the coffee origins. And then our suppliers have gotten used to it. They know it, and they know what we're looking for on the flavor wise as well. That's why we prefer like long-term partnerships in the coffee sourcing, because they know our profile, and then we have done calibration together, so we know what we are buying and they know what we want. And why are we so keen on the quality? Because of the light roast. So you can't hide anything. The soft water that we have and the light roast, it brings out the aromas, the best flavors of the coffee, but it also reveals the defects and inconsistent quality. So it can be really brutal that way. And then before the coffee comes to us and along the way in the process, we taste the coffee in average 10 times before the coffee reaches consumer. So it's been tested along the way a lot. Now, I could give you another half a day presentation about our sustainability commitments and sustainability work we do with the coffee and coffee supply chains. But this is just briefly the slide I wanted to show you as a background on how we buy the coffee and then what defines it on way we do it. So we are known as the front runner on the sustainability and climate work in this field, and a company and then our strategy on the sustainability, climate and nature. So that defines a lot on how and where the coffee is being bought. So this is just an insight that we are profilized sustainability. So we walk the talk, and then this is why and how we buy a coffee as well. So we are not newbies on the coffee buying, and we have given a lot of consider on the strategy of the buying. I mean, the way the world is going now with a lot of new requirements to the coffee trading in compliance, EUDR, traceability, and so on. So we saw this already several years ago, that the only way forward is with the sustainable coffee. And for several years now, we have only bought certified or sustainably verified coffees. So no bother coming to us with conventional coffee. You have to have your house in order, know your coffee, know your supply chain, know your coffee farmers. And the certification we buy at the moment is Rainforest Alliance, Fair Trade, Organic, and we buy from our suppliers' own sustainability programs. But there are a lot of good other programs as well that give you a bit of a backbone on the operations. So then recap on the green coffee buying point of view. Things that we look and where we pay attention when buying coffee to Finnish markets. And these, I would say, goes to every European sustainable coffee or tea company as well. It's the same things. So compliance. I know this is going to be more difficult every year. There's more requirements coming, and this is easier said and done. But we have a full set of requirements for our suppliers as well. We have our code of conduct that must be applied before we get even consider buying. And then since we pass on the code of conduct, you have to be aware of the requirements and you have to make sure that the supply chain is compliant with that. So like said already earlier, no residues, fertilizer, pesticides, know what you're putting on the ground, on the coffee, on the trees. Not all chemicals are allowed in EU, and there are limits on the residues in the green coffee. Fresh coffee. I know there is a market for every coffee there is. Every coffee produced will get sold. There is a buyer for it. But you want to be the one who is known to sell fresh coffee, right? You try to mix old and new. You send the pre-shipment sample from new crop and then send the full container of old coffee. Yes, we notice it. And then you are blacklisted. Don't do it. So like I said already, certification, we don't do any conventional. Most of the roasteries are going to the same direction as well because of the compliance and difficulty on tracking the coffee. There's more requirements. So certifications, any of them, give more trust for the coffee. So you need to know where the coffee comes from. You have how can you say that you comply with the code of conduct or the requirements if you don't even know where the coffee is coming from? You buy a bit of here and there, you lose it. You don't know where the coffee came from. So traceability, there, quality. Again, there is a market for all coffee, but you have a better price on the coffee you sell if you pay attention on the quality. So, and not only one-time quality, but then keep it consistent on the quality, and you'll do fine. So these are like the must-have. But you want to do more, right? Because you want to beat the others. So you do a bit more. You want to stand out. You know your farmers. So if you sell random coffee, you don't get long-term business deals, because then it varies too much where you buy the coffee and you don't own the quality. So you know them, and then you are able to work with them, and then you are able to improve. So this is something that we are doing as well, and we are expecting you to cooperate and support. And when you know your farmers, you know what they need. Where are they struggling? Are the trees too old? Is the yield too small? Is there misuse of fertilizer? Are they doing good agricultural practices? And then you help them, you support, you be their partner. And transparency. So if there is an issue, we want to know, we are not there, you are the foot on the ground. So if there's a risk on delay, risk on quality, risk that you don't get the license from government to export, be transparent on it. So that gives us time to react and then mitigate the risk that we might see, and then be your support on it as well. Good agricultural practices. So whatever you can do and help here, it's a plus. Pesticide, fertilizer management and training, so that it's not being overused. What does the soil need? You just don't throw it, measure it. So if you can provide a training or gather a group for the training, everything is a plus. Quality, so you can get a good quality, but then the fine-tuning of the quality. So if you don't own the quality, you don't own the process, or you don't have taps to it, it's really difficult to follow up and then fine-tune the quality to the buyer's liking or the profile. So the closer you get to the quality, the better you have the opportunity to manage it and get it right. Transparency, see, I have it here twice, but the more it's like trustworthy. So, like said earlier, we are not there and we don't have the chance to visit the origins that often. You are there every day. So then there's a lot of trust in between. We trust you to do what you said. And then if there is no trust, or if the trust is misused, it's game over, buddy. I mean, there's no turning back. We have to trust that what you said is happening actually on the ground, because everything, it will come out eventually. And then if it's not what you said, then it's no business. So, and then climate conscious. This varies a lot. What does the climate conscious mean in different countries, and different countries in Africa, within the different farms as well. So the better you understand, the better you can help. So it's small actions in Africa. I've seen that it's usually that you get the yield improved, because then when you get better yield, the climate emissions per produced kilo gets lower. So it's different things that can be done. And then based on the different countries and farms as well. So with these, I think you'll get pretty far from the coffee market business generally and pricing quality from Africa, from my experience. So Kenya has some really good coffee, really good qualities, but so does other African companies. Price and quality wise, keep tabs on what other coffee producing countries in Africa are doing, because depending on the buyer and where the coffee is bought, you might be also competing with other countries, and it's not just Kenyan coffee. If some country has issues, it's a risk for you that the roasteries will change the blending and then you will lose volume. So be aware of what's happening on other countries as well. There, I think that was my time. And then that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Kati. I think the presentation was very, very insightful. But we can go into this session of Q&A. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Samuel, and thanks, Kati, for the very comprehensive presentation. We have so many questions. I hope we'll be able to answer all of them within the limited time we have. But of course, it all goes to show that both of you, Kati, Linda, you've given a good presentation. I hope, Linda, you've had the opportunity to go through the many questions raised regarding to the policies while also Kati was presenting. So I don't know if you want to
I can give a try to answer as quickly as I can to those excellent questions in the Q&A, if I may.
And then
in 1 minute.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of refer to many things as Kati already mentioned. There was a question on how will we monitor what companies outside the EU will be doing. So in essence, here in the EU, we can only regulate companies operating in the EU. So the idea behind this legislation is that we will create obligations to companies operating in the EU, and then it's a duty for those companies to operate and monitor their own operations and supply chains. So this kind of a cascading effect. And then obviously there will be the supervisory authority, but it doesn't have jurisdiction outside of the EU. So we only have jurisdiction within the EU. And if there is a case regarding adverse impacts, obviously our supervisory authority will have to cooperate with the local authorities to see what has happened and try to find some kind of a solution. So, but in essence, this legislation is built on compliance and the idea that we create obligations for companies operating in the EU, and then they will monitor their own supply chain. The legislation, in my estimation, will come into force in 2027, 28, depending on company size. But for Kenya, I would guess 27, 28, depending on company size. Coffee bought from auctions or traders is an issue. As Kati mentioned, traceability is an issue. So those traders or auctions that are at the moment selling coffee without clear path of traceability, they will have issues. So they will have to have their house in order, so to speak, because in the future, as Kati mentioned, we want to know where each item is coming from. This includes coffee and anything bought from auctions or traders. There was also a question regarding kind of business support, perhaps especially to SMEs. The legislation will include articles on providing support for SMEs. So those companies falling into the scope of the directive will have a legal duty to have SMEs in mind and to operate in a way that they don't harm the operations of an SME. How this will be done in practice, I don't yet know, but it has been included in the articles. Then there was a question regarding certifications. As Kati mentioned, they are already in a big role. They will not most likely be demanded or obligated by the directive, but in practice, this is probably what most businesses operating in the EU will ask you from, because it's easier for them to see that you're doing the things that they need to see that you're doing through a certificate. So there won't be, most likely there won't be a direct obligation, but in practice, this is, in my opinion, what most companies will expect from you. Either a certificate or then participation in some kind of a serious industry initiative. And this comes to my kind of final point. It's great to have you here in this seminar. It already shows that you're interested in this. Please continue networking, especially with the European industry associations, to find out what is happening and to be a part of this forming new landscape, so that you are in the know of what is happening and you're best prepared for the future obligations and things that you need to comply with. Thank you. I hope this helps.
Thank you so much. I think that quite helps. And you've quite answered quite a bit of the questions, which is good. And the questions I see they are keeping on coming in. In case I missed some or some are not answered, I hope the rest of the panelists can also help us to go through those. I don't know, Kati, if you managed to take a breather, because we have now a lot of the other questions which I wanted to direct to you. I don't know if you've managed to go through them, or I could perhaps point some of them to you. Maybe we could start from the point of a lot of people are asking if how they can get in touch with PowerLeague, how they can have PowerLeague, sell directly to PowerLeague and all that, and if there are any specific large buyers from Kenya that you're buying from, which are these that perhaps they need to go through, or they can come through to PowerLeague directly. Maybe we could start with that kind of response, and then we could proceed with the others.
Yeah, I saw there was a lot of questions on, we want to sell coffee to you, want to buy. So then sadly, I have to say that we have a good coffee supply chains already in Kenya. I'm not looking for a new suppliers for the coffee at the moment. And then so we have good and long relationships there already existing. And then we buy coffee. We don't buy specialty coffee. We buy in bulk container level coffee. We buy against actuals, so we do trading. And then yeah, I think there I spoiled a lot of the people's day by saying that, but this was like more of a advice and heads up on how to maybe approach within Europe on the roasteries and then selling coffee, tea, and the aspects that the buyers are paying attention. So if it may bring any help in that sense, then it's good.
Yeah, maybe is it possible to point them to the main supplier, or not? I mean, the particular supplier that you buy to, perhaps they could try and supply through to the suppliers that you already have for Kenya. Maybe that could be something of help.
So, so we have basically any of the biggest Kenyan coffee suppliers. I can say that most likely we are already working with them, and then not naming the list of suppliers that where we buy the coffee in Kenya, but we are well aware of the suppliers there and the operations and how they do. So you pick a list of the best and we do business with them.
Okay, I think that's well responded to. And if I think anyone wants to get more information about Pauli, we'll be able to get that from the website. And then we had the bit about certification. I think also Ms. Linda has answered that if the Finnish buyers insist on the fair trade, organic and rainforest produce, I think that was already catered for, even in your presentation, Kati, so that it is a good to have and a good to do kind of thing. Then we have questions about which countries which African countries export coffee to Finland? I think there was a list of that. So there was quite a number. We had Rwanda, Uganda.
Yeah,
Kenya.
there was a full list of African countries where we buy as well.
I think that, yeah. Let's see. So I think the question about buying green coffee directly is responded to based on what you've said. It's through the supply chain system that you have. So I guess I would just encourage then the coffee farmers, the coffee producers to try and perhaps link up with the major suppliers to see how they could maybe get their coffee to Pauli, because Pauli is one of the bigger buyers in Finland. Let's see, is there any other questions that we are missing? There was a question about maybe how to get access to other tea and coffee buyers, maybe Axel. You could come in and see if there's any help you could give there about, I think Axel mentioned something at the beginning, maybe for the sake of those who joined late. How else can people sell coffee, tea or get access to the Finnish market? Maybe Axel, you can say something about that, then you can go back to Kati.
Yes, thank you, Liz. We can share a few details around this matter, and the easiest way maybe is that we share this with Keproba that can then distribute that to all registered participants in this webinar.
Okay, thanks. And then maybe I could also want to add, that for the Fin partnership, we provide a matchmaking service, and we have a matchmaking database that you can take advantage of. This is accessible via the Fin partnership website. We'll be able to share the website link. You can go there and check in and also register yourself to be in the database, because that is also one of the areas that perhaps buyers will be able to check if they're interested in other suppliers or sellers of coffee or tea from the market. They'll be able maybe to also check that. So I would encourage all of you to go to the Fin Partnership website and check the matchmaking bit, and then maybe register to be included in the database. That's a first step towards maybe getting yourself out there, known to the Finnish market and maybe the rest of the European market as well. So maybe Kati, you could help with this question from David Ngige, who is asking how can, I don't know if you'll answer that, or maybe Axel, how cottage industries in coffee and tea can get funds to increase production and value add. I don't know. Do you have any idea to that? Or maybe Axel, you could mention something about a question from Gigi. How can cottage industries in coffee and tea sector get funds to increase production and value add. I think maybe to start off, it depends. Locally, there are programs even locally in Kenya that are supporting entrepreneurs to be able to access support, technical assistance, to be able to increase your productivity, innovation, and even to be able to help you scale. We have one of them, if I'm allowed to mention, is under the Ministry of Trade. It's called Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project. You can check a look at that, which is supporting capacity building of, let me say, exporters, especially even with a target of tea and coffee. So maybe you can check into that, David, as well. So locally there's support, and also maybe could, as well as you're looking outside. I know I'm looking at the time and we are past time. I don't know if there's any other additional comments. Maybe Kati, you want to say, then maybe Samuel, you can mention if there are any other questions we've left out that needed to be addressed. So over to you, Kati, if there's anything else you want to respond to from what we have.
Not specifically. I know that for a smaller coffee trader, can be really difficult to get to the good supply chains, get the coffee out, and finding the way is challenging. And then yes, for the small, it's really hard to get the traceability as well. That's something that I acknowledge, and it's really difficult. And like I said, with all the requirements that we have, it's much more easier said than done. And then we have practiced this several years, and then we have a supply chain that are existing that we have been working several years. So obviously when we started with the good supply chains, but we have evolved together and then put all these things in place so that the farmers can get the support as well from there, and looking into the livelihood aspect as well. That's also not a simple thing to do, since the farmers may farm something else than coffee as well. So it's not that straightforward. So I'm not sure if there's something, or what can I say on helping. Maybe Axel can find the new paths for the Finnish markets. And then there was questions on how to get coffee to the Finnish markets, roasted, grinded. Yes, there are other coffee companies in Finland as well, smaller ones, roasteries, smaller roasteries as well. They buy specialty coffee, so maybe that might be an easier way to enter the markets from the smaller side as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there's a question about how about tea. So the presentation by Linda about the policy cuts across both tea and coffee sector, and also the information shared by Kati, quite a bit of it will cut across the tea sector in terms of traceability, in terms of how you use the quality of your products, the usage of fertilizer, the bit of being more organic and all. A lot of that will also cut across the tea sector. So, and as to just emphasize that what Axel said earlier, and what Kati has just said, we are going to see how we could be able to reach out to more tea and coffee buyers in the market, and see how we will be able to enhance that connection with the local buyers in Kenya, and we see how that works out. So I know we are running out of time. I just want to post our contacts for Fin Partnership as well in the chat section. You look into that, but right now I'd like to pass back the mic to Simon, who will be able to close and tell us what next.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you for the very good question and answer session. Thank you for the many questions that are coming through. I think we are overwhelmed by time, but what we would try and do after this is to try and consolidate all these questions and see if we can respond to them and communicate and send them back to all participants as we share the presentations that we've had today. I've seen a lot of questions about the presentations. We shall ensure that every participant who registered gets a copy, and so that we can continue with this engagement. I think we are very, very pressed for time, and I would like to bring us to an end, to the close of this session, and just by giving a vote of thanks. Thank you so much to Fin Partnership for availing, for allowing this conversation and to being available even to put this together. And we are very grateful for that. Thank you so much to Flois Mukabana, our CEO. Thank you for all the support to ensure that this happens. To all the panelists, thank you so much. Linda and Kathy, we are grateful for the time that you've given to this for this webinar, and for all the participants for registering. We are honored to have about 490 participants that registered, and we've had a maximum of up to 220 joining in. So we are grateful. We shall continue this engagement. It is our hope that this conversation has began and has elicited a lot of interest into this market, and that we can push through and continue these conversations. We are very, very grateful once again. Thank you for your time. I would like to bring us to a close with that. Asanteni sana. Goodbye.